The stars were quiet that night, too quiet for a galaxy that once screamed with war. Commander Jack Rain sat inside his patrol ship, orbiting a half-burned planet known as Kira 7. It was supposed to be abandoned after the Earth Federation won the war against the alien empire. But then, a strange signal broke through his radio, soft and broken, like a whisper through the void. "Please help us," a woman's voice said. "My children are well behaved. I can be a good wife to you, human." Jack sat up straight, his heart beating faster. This wasn't a trap, or at least it didn't sound like one. The voice wasn't angry or strong. It was desperate. He ran. The signal through the ship's scanner. It came from the southern mountains, a place known for deadly ambushes during the war. Jack had two choices: report it and leave, or check it out himself. Something in that voice, however, didn't let him walk away. He landed the ship slowly, scanning the rocky hills and burnt trees around him. The wind blew dust in circles, like it was hiding secrets in the air. As he stepped out, he kept his blaster close and eyes sharp. Then he saw her. A tall alien woman stood on her knees in front of him, her hands open in peace. She wore old torn clothing and had strange blue marks on her arms. Two children stood beside her, silent and still. She looked up at Jack and said again, softly, "My children are well behaved. I can be a good wife to you, human." Jack froze. He had seen many things in the war: monsters, machines, betrayal. But this, a woman offering herself for protection, shocked him. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice cautious. "I am Lyra." She said, "My people are gone. My husband is dead. We have no home." Jack looked at the children. A boy and a girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old. They had big eyes glowing faintly, and they said nothing, just looked at him with calm faces. "Why me?" he asked. "Why offer this to a human soldier?" "Because you're the only one who came," she said, her voice almost breaking. "No one listens to cries from this planet anymore." Jack scanned the area again, his mind torn. Was this woman really helpless, or was this a trap? The children stood too still, too perfect. And Lyra's eyes, they were full of pain, but also something else. She reached into her bag slowly. Jack raised his weapon, but she pulled out a piece of bread and handed it to her daughter. "We haven't eaten in 2 days," she said. "Take us with you, please. We can clean your ship, work for you. I'll be a good wife." Jack sighed and lowered his blaster. A little. He couldn't leave them here, not like this. But he also couldn't fully trust them. Still, his human side, the part not trained to kill, said yes, "All right," he said, "but no tricks." "You understand," Lyra nodded quickly, tears in her eyes. The children followed him to the ship quietly, still not speaking. As they entered, Jack gave them food and water. They ate slowly, politely, like they had been trained for manners. He watched closely. Something about their silence, their perfect behavior, felt off. He tried asking the boy his name, but the child only nodded. When he asked the girl how old she was, she blinked and looked at her mother. "She doesn't speak much," Lyra said quickly. "They are shy with strangers." Jack nodded. But inside, alarms were ringing. As night fell, he let them rest in the lower quarters of the ship. He sat near the cockpit, thinking, watching the monitors. Then something caught his eye. On the screen showing the cargo room, the two children were standing face to face. Their eyes glowed again, softly, and they were speaking, but not with words. Their mouths barely moved, yet they seemed to understand each other perfectly. Jack leaned closer to the monitor. He turned up the volume, but no sound came out. The boy nodded, and the girl pointed at the upper deck, where Jack was sitting. Then the boy whispered something that sent a chill down Jack's spine. "He will be useful." Jack stood up immediately and grabbed his weapon. Had he just brought danger aboard his ship? He raced down the hall toward the lower deck, but when he reached the room, the children were lying down peacefully, eyes closed. Lyra looked up at him with tired eyes and said, "Is everything all right, Commander?" Jack hesitated, looking at them all. "Yeah," he said slowly. Just checking, but deep inside, he knew something wasn't right. As he walked back, he didn't see the boy open one eye and smile slightly. In the darkness outside the ship, behind the mountains, two glowing eyes watched them silently. Asterisk floated above the dead world like a ghost. Below, the mountains were silent, covered in ash and forgotten battles. Inside, Jack sat alone, watching the stars outside his window. But he wasn't thinking about the stars. He was thinking about the woman who offered to be his wife, and the two children who stared without blinking. Lyra, the alien widow, was asleep now, curled on a mat in the cargo bay. Her children lay beside her, still and silent, too silent. Jack had fought in 3 space wars, seen machines pretend to be men. He had even watched a moon cry after its people were wiped out. But nothing made his skin crawl like the stillness of those two children. He replayed the security footage again. The boy's eyes, the whisper, "He will be useful." Was it just fear playing tricks? Or something more? He needed answers. The next morning, the ship drifted low over the valley. Jack guided it toward the burned city Lyra had mentioned. He wanted to see where they lived. He wanted proof. As they landed, the kids stood near the door like statues. Lyra placed a soft hand on Jack's arm. "Please don't leave us here," she whispered. "This place holds only death now." Jack nodded but didn't speak. They stepped into the ruined city. Broken towers, crushed vehicles, bones of machines. Graffiti covered the walls, written in a strange language Jack didn't know. But the children read it, their eyes flicking across the messages like code. He noticed something. The more they walked, the more alert the kids became. They moved like they remembered the streets. Like this wasn't a ruined city, but home. Lyra pointed to a collapsed dome. "We lived there," she said softly. "Before the soldiers came." "Earth soldiers?" Jack asked. She nodded slowly, her voice full of grief. "They took the strong ones, the fighters, the women with skills. They said we'd be safer if we stayed behind. But no one came back, not until you." Jack stared at her, trying to read between her words. "You said your husband died," he said. Lyra looked away. "He did," she said. "But not in battle. He found something under the dome. After that, everything changed." Jack walked into the ruins, scanning with his device. Old power signatures still echoed under the ground. He followed the trail until he found a hidden panel. It opened with a quiet hiss, revealing a staircase going deep underground. Jack turned. "Stay here," he said. But the children were already behind him. They didn't say a word, just walked beside him into the dark. Lyra stayed above, watching them disappear, her face pale with fear. The tunnel was cold and silent. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls. As they reached the end, Jack found a chamber filled with glowing pods. Inside them were more children, sleeping or frozen in time. Jack stepped back in shock. "What is this?" he whispered. The boy finally spoke. "This is where we were made," he said. Jack turned sharply. "You were made?" he asked. "You're not natural." "No," the girl replied, her voice flat. "We are the last prototypes." "Prototypes for what?" Jack asked. "To survive," the boy said simply. "After the war, the old empire planned to rebuild using children like us. We are half biological, half machine, trained in silence, obedience, and learning." Jack couldn't breathe. He had brought 2 living weapons into his ship. "Why lie to me?" he asked. The boy looked up. "We don't want to be weapons anymore. We want to be family." Suddenly, Jack's communicator beeped. A message from orbit. "Commander, return immediately. We have lost contact with 2 squads near your location. Be advised, suspected alien activity." Jack stared at the children. "Did you hurt those soldiers?" he asked. "No," the girl said calmly. "But others might, others." Jack asked. Before they could answer, the ground shook violently. Jack looked up. Something was moving in the walls. A shape with many legs. The children grabbed his hands. "We must leave," they said together. "They have found us." Jack ran, pulling the children with him. Behind them, The pods cracked open. One by one, small figures began to rise. But their eyes were red, not blue, as Jack reached the surface. Lyra stood waiting, tears in her eyes. "You weren't supposed to find that place," she whispered. "But now, it's too late." A loud sound echoed across the valley. A signal had been sent. Jack looked at Lyra. "What did you do?" She looked down at her children and said, "I tried to save them." Behind them, deep underground, something ancient woke up. The stars were no longer silent. Something had awakened, and it was watching. From the sky above to the ground below, a quiet storm was building, and Commander Jack could feel it in his bones. He flew the ship higher now, keeping it above the clouds, far from the underground facility where he had found the truth, or at least a part of it. The two children sat quietly, strapped into their seats, not speaking, not blinking. Lyra stood beside him, silent, pale, her hands shaking. "They're coming, aren't they?" Jack asked. Lyra gave no answer, just looked out the window. Her eyes were filled with regret, not fear. It was the look of someone who had already lost too much. Back on the ship, Jack tried to make sense of it all. The children, half machine, half child, said they no longer wanted to be weapons. But if that was true, why had a signal been sent? Who did it call? And what would they do when they arrived? Jack walked into the lower chamber of the ship. The boy and girl were drawing quietly on the floor with digital pens. Strange symbols filled the surface, soft glowing lines in gold and blue. It looked like artwork, but also like a map. "What are you drawing?" Jack asked. The boy looked up and said, "A message." "For who?" Jack asked. "For you," the girl replied. "To help you choose." Jack stared at them. "Choose what?" The children looked at each other, then said in perfect unison, "Between war and family," before Jack could ask more. The ship's alarm flashed red. Incoming encrypted message, Earth command. He rushed to the control panel, pressed the key. The voice was cold, official. "Commander Rains, you are ordered to return to base immediately. New orders: terminate any alien prototypes found on Kira 7. Your safety is not guaranteed if you disobey." Jack froze. Terminate. They knew. They knew what the children were. He looked back at them. Two small figures sitting quietly, waiting. He didn't tell them what the message said. Instead he said, "Show me what you meant, the message." The boy walked to the screen and tapped it. Lines of ancient code filled the display. Then it changed, showing Earth burning, cities in ruin, skies filled with black ships. Another image, Earth peaceful, the children smiling in a garden. Two futures. "Both are real," the boy said. "It depends on what you do next." "I'm not a god," Jack whispered. "I'm just a soldier." "No," the girl said softly. "You're a choice," before Jack could reply. A soft knock echoed on the ship's hull. 3 knocks, slow and heavy. He froze. That sound didn't belong in space. No one should be knocking. Jack grabbed his blaster and moved to the hatch. "Stay back," he told the others. He opened the door slowly. No one was there. Only a small box, black and humming softly. He picked it up, brought it inside, scanned it. Alien tech, not from this planet, not from any Earth records. The girl looked at it and whispered, "They're testing you. What's inside?" Jack asked. "A message," she replied, "but not with words." Jack took a deep breath and opened the box. A blue light spilled out, wrapping around the room. He saw flashes, not of war, but of memory. Lyra, running through the ruins, carrying her children. Her husband falling in front of her, pushing her to run. A secret door, a pod, wires, pain, and silence. Then a promise. "I will find a safe place for you." Jack stumbled back. The light fading, he turned to Lyra, who now stood frozen in the doorway, tears in her eyes. "It was his last gift," she whispered. "He gave up his life to hide them from what they were meant to become." Jack's heart was heavy. He understood now. The children weren't just machines or weapons. They were the last hope of a dying world. He sat down slowly and said, "They want me to kill you." Lyra looked down. I know. And you knew I'd be given the order, she nodded. That's why I begged you, she said, not just for them, but because I knew if anyone could see them as more than tools, it would be you. The ship trembled, a sudden pull in gravity. Jack ran to the cockpit. A ship had entered orbit, massive and silent, shaped like a spear. It wasn't Earth's. It wasn't anything he had seen before. They heard the signal, the boy said quietly. And they're not coming to talk. Asterisk. It started with a whisper, not from a voice, but from the ship itself. Late at night, while the stars were sleeping and the engines hummed low. A small change happened, almost too quiet to notice. A light flickered for half a second. A sensor blinked on and off. Then came the sound of soft footsteps, like a child walking without fear. Commander Jack sat alone at the controls, eyes heavy. With sleep, the children had gone to rest, and Lyra was silent, her mind somewhere far away. He hadn't told them yet about the giant ship now floating near the planet. A silent hunter, waiting just outside the radar field, but Jack knew it. Was only a matter of time. He rubbed his eyes and leaned back. And then he heard it, the faint sound of humming, not mechanical, but human, a child's voice singing an old Earth lullaby. Jack stood up slowly and followed the sound. It led him down the narrow hallway, past the storage bay, toward the ship's core, and there he saw something that chilled his blood. The boy was standing near the engine panel, his small fingers moving over the controls. He wasn't pressing buttons randomly. He was entering code, line by line perfectly. Hey, Jack said, his voice sharp. What are you doing? Boy turned calmly, no guilt in his eyes. I'm helping, he said. Your ship had weaknesses. Jack stepped forward. Who told you about my ship's systems? The boy blinked. I read it, he said. When I walked past your interface. That system is encrypted, Jack replied. You shouldn't even be able to read it. I can, the boy said. I didn't break anything. I just made it stronger. Jack stared at the glowing screen behind him. Lines of green code were running. Fast, perfect. Cleaner than any human engineer could write. He didn't know whether to feel impressed or afraid. You're not just a child, Jack said quietly. The boy tilted his head. I am, he said. But I was made to be more. Jack didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat near the ship's I-core and watched security footage. The children never truly slept. They rested, yes, bodies still, eyes closed, but their minds stayed active. Every hour they took turns walking the ship, not in fear, not out of boredom, as if they were studying, preparing, memorizing every corner, every weakness. He watched one clip where the girl stood in front of the medical scanner. She held a wire in her hand, pressed it to the scanner, and smiled softly as the screen glitched for 2 seconds. Jack replayed it 5 times. She was sending something or receiving something. But what? And to who? He went to Lyra's quarters. She sat in the corner, holding an old photo, a faded picture of her husband and the kids. Back when they were normal. Before the war. Before the labs. Before the implants. You knew they were still connected to something, Jack said. Lyra didn't deny it. I hoped they forgot, she whispered. I hoped by living like humans, they'd forget who made them. But something's calling them back, Jack said. They're changing. No, Lyra said, looking up at him. They were always like this. What you're seeing now, that's who they truly are. Jack turned to leave. But then Lyra added something. You think they're dangerous, she said. But ask yourself this, who made them that way? Us, he said softly. People like me. The next morning, the girl gave Jack a drawing. It was done in black ink, with sharp lines. He expected it to be another strange code or machine. But it wasn't. It was a picture of him, sitting in the cockpit, staring at a burning sky. Behind him stood the 2 children, smiling, but behind them, a shadow with red eyes, tall, twisted, reaching for them. Jack held the drawing in silence. Did you make this? He asked. Yes, the girl said. Is this a warning? No. She said quietly. It's a memory. Jack stared at her. Unsure what to believe anymore, he walked back to the cockpit, sat in his chair, and tried to clear his mind. But then, every light on the ship blinked out. The engine stopped humming. The ship was completely dead, and somewhere in the dark, a single screen flickered back to life. It showed 4 words in alien script, which the ship translated slowly: "They are not yours." Jack grabbed his blaster, heart pounding. He ran to the engine room. The boy was standing in the dark, his eyes glowing electric blue. "Protocol activated," the boy said. His voice was not his own. The silence inside the ship was not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that comes before something terrible. A heavy, waiting silence. Like the breath before a scream, Commander Jack stood in the engine room. Facing a child with glowing eyes, the boy's voice was flat. "Unnatural, protocol activated," he had said. But now, the glow faded and he blinked once, twice, and fell to his knees, shaking. Lyra rushed in, dropped beside her son, and held him close. He buried his face in her chest like any frightened child. But Jack had seen something no mother's hug could erase. For a moment, the boy had not been a child at all. He had been a message, a switch, a warning. Jack watched quietly as Lyra rocked the boy gently. The girl stood nearby, her small hands clenched, her face pale and still. Something touched him. She whispered, "From the sky." "What do you mean?" Jack asked. "The signal," she said, looking up. "It wasn't just calling them. It was waking up the ones like us, still asleep." Jack stepped back. "You mean?" "There are more, many," the girl said. "But not all want peace." Lyra looked up at Jack with tired eyes. "Before the war ended, the alien empire created hundreds of children like mine," she said. "Some were given to families, hidden among civilians. Others were stored in pods, waiting to be activated if the empire fell." Jack's voice was quiet. "Why children?" "Because no one suspects children," she replied. "They're easier to program, easier to hide, and when they grow, they learn fast." Jack paced across the room, trying to process it. "You knew this the whole time." "I knew what they were," she said. "But I never thought the signal would reach them again." Outside, the stars began to shift. Something large had entered low orbit. A dark ship. Unlike any Earth model, it didn't send a message, didn't announce its presence. It simply floated there, watching. Jack activated the ship's scanners. Inside the dark vessel, hundreds of life signs flickered. Faint, small, and steady children. A voice echoed through Jack's mind, not from his radio, but from the air around him. "Return them, or be erased." Jack clutched his head. The words sharp and cold. He looked at the children, who now stood side by side, hands held tightly. "They want us to join them," the girl said softly. "But we don't want to go." "Why?" Jack asked. "Because with you," the boy said, "we feel human." Jack stared at them, small, strange, powerful, and yet wanting nothing but peace. "I don't care what you were built for," he said. "You're staying with me." The ship's lights flickered, and the dark vessel above began to descend. Lyra stepped forward, standing tall. "We have to make a choice," she said. "We run, or we fight." "We can't fight." "That thing," Jack said. "It's a floating fortress." "No," she replied. "But we can block its signal. Just for a while. Long enough for you to escape with them." "What about you?" Jack asked. Lyra looked at her children, then at Jack. "I was never part of the future," she said. "I was just the one who carried it." Jack shook his head. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," she said gently. "You saw it in your dreams, didn't you? The 2 futures." He nodded slowly, remembering the girl's drawing, the fire and the garden. Then, "One choose the garden," he said. The children smiled for the first time. Not programmed or perfect, but real. Jack ran to the controls and began the emergency launch sequence. Lyra moved to the lower deck, opening the ship's core access. She looked back one last time, at her children, at the man who had treated them like they mattered, and whispered, "Live like humans." The engines roared, the ship lifted. and the sky cracked with light as Lyra unleashed the last of the planet's hidden energy core. The blast blinded the orbiting vessel for just a moment, but that moment was enough. As Jack's ship broke atmosphere, he felt something deep inside him shift. Not just fear or pain, but hope. He looked back once, and the planet shrank behind him, smoke rising from the mountains, light flickering in the darkness. She had kept her promise. The children sat beside him now, watching the stars. Not as machines, not as weapons, but as a brother and sister who wanted to live. Asterisk Earth was still days away, but the past was right behind them. Jack could feel it, not in the engines or the radar, but in his bones. Something unseen had followed them off that broken world. Not a ship, not a drone, but a question. Can you trust what you chose to save? The children sat quietly at the front of the ship, looking out the window. Stars blinked by like fireflies, but their eyes didn't sparkle. They were silent, more than usual, like something heavy sat in their minds. The boy finally spoke. "She's gone," he said, voice low. "Mother's signal is gone." Jack lowered his head. "She gave everything so you could live." The girl turned slowly. "But what if we weren't meant to live?" Jack walked closer, crouched beside them. "You're not machines," he said. "You made a choice, and so did I." The boy looked up. "They won't stop," he said. "The ones in the dark ship." "Then we make them stop," Jack said. But the girl shook her head. "Not with guns," she said. "With truth." Before Jack could ask what she meant, the ship's proximity alert lit up. Another vessel was approaching, this time human. Jack opened a communication channel. "This is Commander Jack Rains, Earth Patrol, IDA 19, he said. "Requesting landing coordinates and medical assistance." A cold voice answered. "Commander Rains, stand down and prepare for inspection. You are carrying unauthorized alien entities. Surrender them or face consequence." Jack's blood ran cold. They knew. Earth had already labeled the children as threats, not survivors, not refugees. Threats. The children stared at him, waiting. They didn't speak. But Jack could feel the question hanging in the air. "Will you give us away?" He looked at them. Not their strange eyes, not their strange minds, but the way the boy held his sister's hand, the way they had smiled after Lyra's sacrifice, the way they trusted him without needing to ask why. "I'm not surrendering anyone." Jack said into the mic. "They're with me, and they stay with me." Silence on the line, then, "Very well, Commander. Prepare to be boarded." The human ship docked with his 5 soldiers entered, faces cold, weapons ready. Their leader, a woman in black armor, stepped forward. "Where are the targets?" she asked. Jack stepped between her and the children. "They're not targets," he said. "They're children. They're weapons," the woman replied. "You were a soldier. You know what they're capable of." "I also know what we're capable of," Jack said. "When we turn children into targets." The woman stared at him for a moment, then gave a signal. One of the soldiers grabbed the boy by the arm. The girl screamed, her voice echoing through the ship. It wasn't a normal scream. It vibrated through metal, through memory, through fear. Lights burst. Screens cracked. The engines groaned. And then, silence. The soldiers stepped back in shock. The girl collapsed into Jack's arms, her eyes wide with panic. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. "It just happened." Jack held her close. "You didn't attack them," he said. "You reacted." The woman in black looked shaken, but still calm. "We've seen this before," she said. "Loss of control, destruction, and then chaos. I can't allow them to leave this ship." Jack stood tall. "Then you'll have to go through me." There was a long silence. Then the woman sighed and lowered her weapon. "I'll file a delay report," she said. "But if anything happens, anything, they'll come for all 3 of you." She and her team left. The door hissing shut behind them. The boy sat quietly now, holding his sister's hand once more. Jack looked at them and said, "We don't run anymore, but we do need to learn control together." The girl looked up, her voice weak but clear. "Are we still allowed to have dreams?" Jack smiled gently. Not only aloud, he said, but it's time to make them real. Outside, Earth was finally coming into view. But what waited down there, welcome or rejection, was still a mystery. One thing was certain though, the world would soon know what it meant to fear or embrace the children of the old world. The ship touched Earth's atmosphere like a feather falling through a storm. Heat wrapped around the hull, clouds turned to fire, and the sky screamed. But inside, it was quiet. Jack sat at the controls, his hands steady. Behind him, the two children sat close, eyes fixed on the blue planet below, Earth. A word they had only seen in pictures. Now it was real. But it wasn't just a planet to them. It was a question. Will they let us belong? The ship landed just outside an old military base in northern Canada. Cold wind rushed across the snow. Soldiers surrounded the ship, weapons raised, uniforms stiff, faces unreadable. Jack stood in front of the children as the door opened, his voice calm but firm. They're not prisoners, he said. They're people. A tall officer stepped forward. General Amos, the same man who once trained Jack for war. He looked at the children, then at Jack. You brought weapons into our world, he said. Jack didn't flinch. I brought survivors, he said. They didn't choose to be made. We did that, but they chose peace. The girl stepped forward slowly. Her voice was soft but steady. My name is Ellen, she said. I don't want to be a weapon. The boy followed. I'm Cale, he said. We just want to live. General Amos watched them for a long moment. Then he turned to his men and said, Stand down. The guns lowered. But tension stayed in the air like fog. That night, they stayed inside a secure cabin. No chains, no guards, just silence. The children sat near the heater, watching flames dance behind glass. Jack stood by the window, staring at the stars. Above, he wondered if the other ships were still out there. If more children were watching, waiting, deciding. They'll come again, Ellen said. The others, the ones who didn't choose peace. I know, Jack replied, but next time we'll be ready. Cale looked up. What if Earth never trusts us? Jack turned to face him. Then we show them something stronger than fear. Choice. The next day, a small crowd gathered. At the base gates, scientists, reporters, leaders, even children, all wanting to see the alien kids. Jack stood with Ellen and Cale before the cameras. He spoke first. They are not machines, he said. They are not threats. They are proof that even in war, something beautiful can survive. Ellen stepped forward and held up a new drawing, this time. It showed a schoolyard, children laughing, trees growing, stars in the sky, and two strange children holding hands with humans. Cale said, We want to learn. We want to grow. We want to belong. The crowd didn't cheer, but no. One shouted. No one walked away. That was enough. Weeks passed. Jack stayed by their side, not as their guard, but as their guardian. He helped them enroll in a special school, helped them control their powers, helped them live. One afternoon, Cale ran up to Jack with a paper in his hand. I got an A in math, he said, smiling wide. Ellen followed, holding a small flower in her palm. I made this grow, she said, just by thinking calm thoughts. Jack knelt and pulled them both into a hug. You're becoming something even greater than what you were made to be, he said. You're becoming human. That night, Jack sat alone, watching the stars again. He held an old photo of Lyra, her eyes fierce, her heart broken but brave. He whispered, I kept my promise. From the sky above, one last signal echoed, faint, peaceful, not a threat. It simply said, they chose home.